The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to East Hertfordshire, people, for round number 3. Now, in this place, we're going to be seeing a lot of grand mansion-type buildings, or at least that's the theory. A lot of them are behind some trees and some high walls, so they may be a little bit invisible to us. Never mind, the internet exists for things like that, doesn't it? Even so, this village, I know, is going to be a belter. I've just driven through it, and I know it's going to be absolutely fantastic. Welcome to Cottered. Cottered, spawn of fish stream. Continuing through East Hertfordshire this week, next we come to a place called Cottered, which lies just 3 miles to the west of Buntingford. This is one of those places which is very little known, but really it should be known more. The village has a Japanese garden designed in the early 20th century by Herbert Good, and you can find it at the Garden House. It's listed Grade 2 on the Register of Historic Parks and Gardens. That's not all. Its manor house, which was built in the 1400s, is said to be the oldest inhabited house in Hertfordshire. If it's impressive houses you're after, north of Cottered on a private drive off Throcking Road is Broadfield House. That was rebuilt for Lady Hester Lee, daughter of the Earl of Marlborough, who married into the Poulter family. Her daughter Margaret married John Forrester, and their son James had Broadfield extended, with stables designed by Nicholas Hawksmoor. They too are now Grade 2 listed. Cottered has had a number of notable people live within it too. The Reverend Anthony Trollope was one of them. He was incumbent of Cottered for 44 years and died in 1806. He was the grandfather to the authors Anthony and Thomas Adolphus Trollope. Cottered also has a blue plaque to the first president of the Republic of China, Sun Yat-sen, who once stayed at the kennels. So yeah, don't be driving through this one thinking there's absolutely no history. Trust me, there's lots. Let's go. We start today's walk at the village hall. In what's perhaps a nod to the prosperity and the wealthiness of the parish we're in here, Cottered boasts one of the most modern village halls in the entire county of Hertfordshire. Built in 2001, the hall is managed by a charitable trust. It benefits from a host of modern facilities, a large car park and an adjacent playing field. It's not the first village hall that Cottered has ever had. It used to have a modest affair, largely built by voluntary labour, which was opened in 1957. That's now gone, and with this, Cottered hauled itself into the 21st century. Unfortunately, it's the only real communal amenity the place now has. Cottered used to have a couple of shops. These were Cartwright's little shop and the post office and stores, the latter run for many years by the Edwards family. They've now gone, meaning a trip to the shops here is likely a drive into Buntingford. Sports are played here though. Cottered FC play on the pitch that's near the village hall. They are one of the longest established football clubs in Hertfordshire and they're affiliated to the County FA. Currently, they're members of the Hertford and District League. And once you've got across the sports field, you then hit this field here, which has got a network of footpaths running across it. There's one that goes directly south, there's one that goes southwest, and there's one that goes to the west, and it's that one that we're following. If you follow this western footpath, it takes you to a road that's just south of the church, which is our next major landmark. Cottered's church is dedicated to St John the Baptist. The oldest part of the building is its tower, which dates back to the mid-14th century. However, some believe a church may have existed in Cottered as early as the 12th century, though if it did, it's not known for sure where it might have stood. This church was once dedicated to St Mary, as indicated by some historical references from the early 15th century. Its location is on a possible pilgrimage route to Walsingham in Norfolk, which may explain the presence of a 15th century mural of St Christopher, the patron saint of travellers, within the church itself. St John's has been renovated and extended several times, with the most recent taking place between 1915 and 1925. The west window was a millennium project, and it depicts the baptism of Jesus alongside some of the key characters involved in the spread of Christianity. These are figures such as St Alban and Thomas Cranmer. Don't overlook the churchyard here either. It's the final resting place of Sir James Cantley, who was a physician and the founder of the London School of Tropical Medicine. The circular shape of the churchyard is also a clue to past times. Normally, such a layout indicates the possibility of a pre-Christian or pagan site. Now, so far we haven't seen any of those grand buildings and Grade 2 listed features which I've promised you. However, we are about to talk about one of them. You can see there's some gates behind me there, and they lead to something called the Garden House, and this is a Japanese marvel. In 1905, Herbert Good, a wealthy glass and china merchant, began to create a miniature Japanese landscape on 3 flat fields on the edge of Cottered, close to the church. During a second visit to Japan a few years later, Good acquired a practical knowledge of Japanese gardening, and on his return called on Seoman Kusamoto to advise on further developments to his garden. Whilst some artifacts were brought from Japan soon after 1905, others were installed during the second period of development in the 1920s, when Good also built Chain's house. The garden featured, amongst other things, hills, a mountain, waterfalls and lakes, together with numerous items sent from Japan, including stone lanterns, further garden ornaments and a tea house. Good also laid out an Italian garden, which is now gone. There was also a meadow and a small woodland of an English character on the remainder of the land. The garden was restored by some future owners in 1964, and a second home, the Garden House, was built adjacent to it all in 1966. It's still one of the best and most sympathetically kept Japanese gardens in the country, although the site remains in divided ownership to this day. Without question, Cottered's best known listed building is a manor house called the Lordship. It was built in the early to mid 15th century, probably for John Frey, who held the manor between 1428 and 1461. He was once the chief baron of the Exchequer. It was altered in the early 17th century by Edward Poulter, and its chimney dates from 1699. Given the date of construction and the fact that it's still lived in, the Lordship is considered to be the oldest inhabited house in Hertfordshire. In the 1950s, it was owned by former Prime Minister David Lloyd George's second son, Major Gwilym Lloyd George. He was the first Viscount Tenby and Minister for Food from 1951 until 1954. Later, he was also Home Secretary and Minister for Welsh Affairs until 1957. In 2021, the Lordship was put on the market for the first time in 50 years. The asking price was a whopping £2.15 million, and given its owners had lovingly maintained its ancient character for half a century, it was probably worth every penny. Now, all of that is certainly not a load of trollop, but this next thing is. The Reverend Anthony Trollope was incumbent of Cottered for 44 years and died in 1806. He now lies in the churchyard. He was the grandfather of the authors Anthony and Thomas Adolphus Trollope. Anthony's best known work is a series of novels collectively known as the Chronicles of Barsetshire, which revolves around the imaginary county of the same name. He also wrote novels on political, social and gender issues, and other topical matters. His literary reputation dipped during the last years of his life, but he regained somewhat of a following in the mid-20th century. Thomas Adolphus Trollope penned more than 60 books. He lived most of his life in Italy, creating a renowned villa in Florence with his first wife, Theodosia, and later another centre of British society in Rome with his second wife and fellow novelist, Frances Eleanor Trollope. In fact, his mother, brother and both wives were known as writers. He was awarded the Order of Saints Maurice and Lazarus by Victor Emmanuel II of Italy. Speaking of matters of foreign extraction, how about this? The Kennels, another house within the village, has a blue plaque. It commemorates the visit to the village of Sun Yat-sen, the first president of the Republic of China. A revolutionary statesman and political philosopher, Sun is revered by both the Republic of China on Taiwan, where he's officially the father of the nation, and by the People's Republic of China, where he's officially the forerunner of the revolution, for his instrumental role in the 1911 revolution that successfully overthrew the Qing dynasty. After the success of the latter, Sun quickly resigned as president, relinquishing the position to General Yuan Shikai and ultimately going into exile in Japan. He died of gallbladder cancer in 1925. A vital component of Sun's legacy is his political philosophy, known as the Three Principles of the People. These are the people's independence from foreign domination, their rights, and their livelihood. He also composed the lyrics to the Republic of China's national anthem. Okay folks, we've located the parish notice board. One of these cards going on it. There we go. That's Cottered done. This is Cottered Telephone Exchange, located just off the A507 which passes through the village. It serves Cottered, Throcking and the surrounding area. The telephone code for this exchange is 01763 281, but it used to be 076 381. All the telephone nuts will be loving that information. You know who you are. You lot are almost like the legendary allotment fans. Next we come to a pub. The early 18th century Bull Inn used to be a butcher's shop and was for over a century. Once it stopped serving meat, it became a pub, and in the 19th century the Manor Court was held here. It's timber framed and plastered with an attractive red tiled roof. That's an East Anglian tradition, and we will see plenty more structures just like it. The main focus of the pub is its food, for which it's won awards previously. There's a separate area if you just want a drink, and also a large garden at the back. Okay, we're virtually back to the beginning. I parked on the crescent, which ironically is not actually a crescent. It's not curved at all. It's kind of dead straight. So why it's called the crescent, I've got no idea. Anyway, from here we will go to Throcking, which is a hamlet also within these parish boundaries. It's got a church and it's also got another of those big houses, or it used to at least. There can be no doubt that Cottered has several amazing buildings and loads with a backstory worthy of their own videos. The hamlet of Throcking, which falls within Cottered's boundaries, has one of its own. Unfortunately, it no longer stands, and this picture is one of the very few that exists out there of Broadfield House. It was built for Lady Hester Lee, daughter of the Earl of Marlborough, who married into the Poulter family. Her daughter Margaret married John Forrester, and their son, James, had Broadfield extended with stables designed by Nicholas Hawksmoor. These are the stables on your screen now. As you head up the lane into Throcking, you'll pass a water tower. I don't know much about this one, I'm afraid, people. I couldn't find much, but you can tell it's definitely used for media communications as well as it is water. Check out all those aerials and dishes on top of it. Throcking used to be a civil parish in its own right. It's little more than a hamlet and has been since it was largely deserted in the later Middle Ages. Throcking's property largely sits on a square of lanes about half a mile north of the A507. Now, you probably don't realise it when you're driving, but this area is one of the highest elevation-wise within the generally low county of Hertfordshire, and it's underlain by a chalk seam. The area supports arable agriculture in large and open fields, and given the vast emptiness around you, several locals refer to its location as an area of big skies. The former parish is drained by a small stream running along the attractively named Thistley Vale, which joins the River Rib before running southwards to meet the Thames and the North Sea via the River Lee. By Hertfordshire standards, Throcking was a small parish. It covered just over 900 acres and supported a tiny population of just over 60 people. The hamlet still retains a church. Holy Trinity Church stands at the northeastern corner of Throcking Square of Lanes. Its structure dates from two distinct eras, the oldest being the Western Tower, which has its origins in the 13th century. The remainder of the church dates from the Perpendicular period of the late 14th or early 15th centuries, generally regarded as the Great Church Building era of England. The church is small and almost square, and there's no chancel as such. Holy Trinity is surrounded almost entirely by a screening wall of mature trees, and it's largely hidden from the lanes except from the south. It is at that southern side, though, that the entry is found, a pair of wooden gates piercing the screening trees. As with many churches, the COVID pandemic did little to aid it. It was closed for a short time, but reopened for services in October 2021. They are held on the third Sunday of every month at 11 a.m. And with Throcking visited, Cottered is done. Let's move on to another small place on the outskirts of Buntingford, shall we? Tomorrow we're going to be talking a lot about cricket. That's not usually a topic that's hot in Hertfordshire, but it is where we're going. See you there, folks. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.